Sometimes the people you trust the most hide the darkest secrets. I thought I knew my husband. I thought I knew his family. But one night, I found out that the truth was far more disturbing than I could ever imagine, and what I did next made sure they'd never hurt me again. Part 1: The photo I shouldn't have seen. They say curiosity kills the cat, but they never mention what it does to a marriage. It was late, past midnight. My husband, Daniel, had fallen asleep on the couch again, half watching some boring crime documentary. I was in the kitchen scrolling aimlessly when I noticed his phone light up on the coffee table. A notification. Just one word: photo. I should have ignored it, but I didn't. Picked up his phone. No passcode. Daniel never bothered with one, claiming if you can't trust your spouse, what's the point? That sentence would taste different in my mouth by the end of the night. I tapped the screen. The photo opened. First it was just skin, pale smooth. A collarbone. The curve of a shoulder. No face. But then my eyes caught it. A silver bracelet, thin and delicate, with a tiny scratch near the clasp. Scratch I knew, because I had made it. It was on the day I gifted that bracelet to Alyssa, my sister-in-law. The room suddenly felt too small. My hands shook, and for a moment I convinced myself there had to be a mistake. Someone else had the same bracelet. That was all. But deep inside, something old and instinctive whispered, "No, you already know the truth." Part 2: The bracelet that wouldn't let me sleep. Daniel stirred when I set his phone back on the table. His eyes half opened, glazed with sleep, and he mumbled something about finishing the documentary later. Then he padded off to bed like nothing had happened. I stayed in the living room. The silence was thick, almost sticky, and I could hear the faint tick of the clock on the wall. That bracelet kept flashing in my mind like a lighthouse in a storm. Alyssa, Daniel's younger sister. She was the kind of woman people naturally liked, warm, outspoken, the life of every family gathering. But there was always something. A closeness between them I'd written off as sibling affection. An extra hug. A lingering hand on his arm. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. It was all harmless. Until now. I opened the wedding album. My fingers trembled as I flipped through the pages, past the smiling guests, the staged cake cutting. And there, in the background of one photo, Alyssa laughing, tossing her hair back, the silver bracelet catching the light. The same scratch. The same chain. My stomach churned. I thought of calling her right then, demanding an explanation. But what would I say? "I saw your shoulder in a photo on my husband's phone." I closed the album and set it on the coffee table. The room felt colder, like someone had left a window open. That night, I didn't go to our bedroom. I curled up in the guest room instead, but sleep didn't come. Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw that bracelet, and I couldn't decide if I wanted to rip it off her wrist or strangle Daniel with it. Part 3: His explanation that explained nothing. Morning came too bright, like it had no idea my world had tilted. Daniel was already in the kitchen, whistling softly as he poured coffee. He looked normal. That was the worst part. I sat at the table watching the steam curl from my cup. "Who texted you so late last night?" I asked casually, though my heart was hammering. He glanced at me, then shrugged. "Work stuff. Mark needed some figures for the project." I let the silence stretch just long enough for him to notice. "Work sends pictures now?" I tilted my head. He paused, mug halfway to his lips. "You went through my phone?" I didn't answer. His jaw tightened just for a second before he forced a smile. "Babe, it's nothing. You know how things look out of context." Out of context. The phrase sat in my gut like a stone. Could have pushed. I could have said her name. But something in me wanted to wait, to see how deep this hole went before I shoved him into it. So I smiled back the way women do when they're planning war. "Of course. Just curious." He leaned down, kissed my cheek, and left for work. The second the door closed, I grabbed my coat, because if he wasn't going to give me answers, I'd find them myself. Part 4: The Hidden Folder. Daniel had barely pulled out of the driveway when I was already on my knees, rummaging through the drawer where he kept his old phone, the one he claimed was broken and useless. It wasn't useless. I charged it, watching the black screen slowly glow to life. The background photo was of us taken years ago on a beach, back when I still believed we were unshakable. My hands were damp as I navigated through the menus. First, nothing. Just the usual apps, some random games, work emails. But then I saw it. A folder buried deep under utilities, named with a single harmless word: recipes. Daniel never cooked a day in his life. My thumb hovered over it, but I didn't open it right away. I sat there, staring at the screen, my reflection in the glass looking paler than I remembered. I told myself this could still be innocent. Maybe it was recipes. Maybe. I tapped it. The screen blinked and there they were, thumbnails. Dozens of them. All photos. All women. Most without faces. But my eyes locked onto one image in the middle. A close-up of a neck, the skin flushed, a silver bracelet hanging loose. My stomach dropped. I zoomed in, desperate to find anything that would prove it wasn't her. But the closer I looked, the clearer it became. The tiny scratch. The way it always sat slightly crooked on her wrist. Alyssa. I threw the phone onto the couch like it had burned me. The room felt tilted, like the floor wasn't level anymore. I didn't cry. Not yet. Part 5: The Conversation I Wasn't Supposed to Hear. I told myself I'd confront him that evening. Demand answers. Scream if I had to. But by the time Daniel came home, my courage had curdled into something colder: quiet observation. He seemed tense, checking his phone more than usual, barely touching his dinner. Then just after 10, his screen lit up again. I caught the name before he could tilt it away. Alyssa. I'm gonna take this in the garage, he said casually, already halfway to the door. I waited. 30 seconds. Then I followed. The garage door was closed, the only light a sliver from the house. I could hear his voice, low, urgent. No, I told you she doesn't know. She thinks it's just. A pause. Don't say that. You know I hate when you call me that. Another pause. His tone softened, almost intimate. I'll see you tomorrow. Same place. I stepped back before he could open the door, my breath quick and shallow. It wasn't just the words. It was the way he said them, like someone who had no shame, no fear. And the strangest part? There had been no flirtation in his tone. No laughter, no playful teasing. It was something else entirely. Something I didn't have a name for yet. But deep down, I had a feeling I was about to find out. Part 6: Following Him. I woke up before dawn the next day, long before Daniel's alarm. I lay still, eyes open, listening to the rhythm of his breathing beside me. Calm. Untroubled. At 6:30, he dressed quickly, saying he had an early meeting. No breakfast, no coffee. Just grabbed his keys and left. 5 minutes later, I followed. It wasn't hard to tail him. Daniel never checked his mirrors much. The streets were still quiet, the sky washed in pale gray. I kept my distance, heart pounding with every turn he made. We left the familiar neighborhoods and headed toward the industrial part of town, a place where nobody goes without a reason. Eventually, he turned down a narrow road lined with old warehouses. He slowed, then pulled into a side lot, stopping beside a rusted metal door. And then I saw her. Alyssa stepped out of the shadows like she'd been waiting for him. No hesitation. No awkward glances. She walked straight into his arms, and he held her like he'd done it 1,000 times before. But it wasn't just the hug. It was the way they looked around before disappearing inside together. The way he put his hand on her lower back, guiding her in. The way she leaned into him, smiling faintly, like they shared a secret too dangerous for daylight. I sat there in my car, frozen, the steering wheel cold beneath my fingers. I could have gone after them, could have kicked the door in. Instead, I stayed, waiting, because whatever was happening inside that warehouse, I had the horrible feeling I wasn't ready to see it yet. Part 7. Inside the warehouse. I told myself I was just going to look, just enough to confirm the worst and leave. But when 20 minutes passed and neither of them came out, my curiosity became something darker, an itch I couldn't stop scratching. I parked 2 streets over and came back on foot. The warehouse loomed over me, its corrugated walls streaked with rust. The air smelled faintly of oil and something else. Something sweet, like old perfume clinging to fabric. The side door wasn't locked. It groaned when I pushed it open, the sound echoing down a dim hallway. My shoes crunched over dust and small bits of broken glass. Voices, faint but unmistakable. I followed the sound, my pulse in my throat. The corridor opened into a wide room lit by a single hanging bulb. In the middle was a table, and on it, scattered like cards, were photographs. Dozens of them. Some were of Daniel, some of Alyssa, some of them together. My stomach turned, but I couldn't look away. Their faces were close, almost touching. His hand on her jaw. Her smile. Not nervous, not ashamed, but full of something else entirely. Then I heard a chair scrape behind me. Looking for something, Daniel stood in the doorway, Alyssa right behind him. Neither of them looked surprised to see me. Part 8. The Gaslight. Daniel didn't move toward me. Neither did Alyssa. They just stood there like they'd been expecting me all along. What is this? I finally managed, my voice trembling. Daniel's eyes flicked to the table, then back to me. It's not what you think. I laughed sharp, ugly. Really? Because it looks exactly like what I think. Alyssa stepped forward, her voice calm, almost pitying. You're overreacting. These are just memories. Family moments. Family moments? My voice cracked. You're in his arms. He's kissing your neck. Daniel sighed like I was a child throwing a tantrum. You've always been jealous of how close Alyssa and I are. You twist everything into something dirty. My chest tightened. Dirty? Daniel, this is love, Alyssa interrupted, her tone almost serene. It's love, and it's been here long before you. The room tilted. My fingers dug into my palms. They weren't denying it. They weren't even ashamed. Daniel took a step closer, lowering his voice. You don't have to make this ugly. We can all just move on. Move on. Like I just caught him lying about bills, not about sleeping with his own sister. I looked between them, and in that moment I realized something chilling. They weren't afraid of me exposing them. They were afraid of me staying. Part 9. The walk away. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the table over and send their precious photos flying. I just stared at them for one long, heavy breath, and then turned toward the door. Where are you going? Alyssa's voice was almost mocking. I didn't answer. Daniel stepped aside, letting me pass. He thought he'd won. I could see it in the smug curve of his mouth. He thought I'd go home, drown in shame, and leave them to whatever twisted little world they'd built. But as I stepped into the cold morning air, the thought of disappearing never crossed my mind. No, something else did. Something sharp and deliberate. I walked to my car without looking back, my fingers already tapping at my phone. I had contacts, friends, people who owed me favors. And as the engine rumbled to life, I whispered to myself, you two have no idea what's coming. Because if they wanted to play games, I was about to change the rules. Part 10. Baiting the trap. By the time I got home, the adrenaline had burned off, leaving behind something colder, focus. If I was going to destroy them, I couldn't rush. This had to be careful, precise, irreversible. I started with Alyssa's social media. Scrolling through her photos, I noticed something. She'd been careful never to post anything too close with Daniel. But the backgrounds, the places, told a different story. One lakeside cabin. Same throw blanket draped over the couch in Daniel's solo fishing trip photos. A mirror selfie where a man's jacket, his jacket, hung in the corner. Piece by piece I built a puzzle. And then I messaged her. Hey, I found something you might not want anyone else to see. Want to meet? No threats. No anger. Just enough to pull her in. An hour later she replied, "Where?" I smiled, typing the address of a small coffee shop 2 towns over. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I could control the conversation and the evidence. Because she thought I only had a few suspicious pictures. She didn't know I'd already broken into Daniel's cloud storage that morning and downloaded everything. And soon she was going to see exactly what everything meant. Part 11, Coffee with the Enemy. The bell above the cafe door jingled as Alyssa walked in. Even dressed down in jeans and a hoodie, she still carried herself like someone used to being the center of attention. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on me. No smile. No greeting. Just a slow walk to my table. "You're early," I said, sliding the extra coffee I'd ordered toward her. She didn't touch it. "What do you want?" I pulled my phone from my bag and unlocked it. Without a word, I tapped on a folder and spun the screen toward her. Her face paled instantly. Photo after photo. Not just the staged romantic ones from the warehouse, but the ones they hadn't meant for anyone to see. Alyssa's hand in Daniel's at family dinners, hidden under the table. Hotel receipts in both their names. A video clip, short but unmistakable. Alyssa's voice was barely a whisper. "Where did you get these?" I leaned in. I think the better question is, what am I going to do with them? For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small. "If you show these..." "Oh, I'm not showing them," I cut in. "Not yet. See, I want something first." Her jaw tightened. "What?" I smiled. "Daniel. Alone. Tonight." She stared at me, confused. But she would agree, I knew she would. Because in that moment, Alyssa understood exactly what I was holding over her head. Part 12 check, but not mate. Daniel showed up exactly on time, like always. We met at a quiet bar near the highway, neutral ground, public enough to keep voices low, private enough to let the tension breathe. He slid into the booth opposite me, leaning back like nothing had happened. "So, what's this about?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I placed my phone on the table and let the screen light up with a thumbnail of him and Alyssa, their faces too close to be mistaken. His smirk faltered. "Where did you?" "I've seen everything," I said flatly. "The photos. The videos. The hotels. Even the cabin trips you told me were for work." He swallowed, his hand tightening around his glass. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly." I cut him off. "What I don't understand is why you thought you could humiliate me and get away with it." He tried to shift into his usual charm, the same tone that used to smooth over arguments. "Look, this is complicated. Alyssa and I don't care," I said, leaning forward. "I'm not here for your excuses. I'm here to give you a choice." His eyes narrowed. "What choice?" I smiled, slow, deliberate. "You'll find out tomorrow night. At the warehouse. Bring Alyssa. And don't be late." He stared at me like I'd grown another head, but he didn't argue. Because the truth was, Daniel had no idea what kind of endgame I was playing. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Part 13, back to the beginning. The warehouse looked different at night. The rusted walls seemed blacker, the shadows deeper. Even the air felt thicker, like it knew what was about to happen. I got there first, positioning the single chair in the center of the main room, under that same dangling bulb. On the table beside it, I laid out a neat row of printed photos, each one more damning than the last. The sound of tires crunching gravel made my pulse quicken. Headlights swept across the walls before going dark. Daniel walked in first, Alyssa a step behind him. Both looked tense, but neither spoke. "You wanted us here," Daniel said, his voice clipped. "Now what?" I gestured to the chair. "Sit." He didn't move. "If this is about..." "Sit," I repeated, sharper this time. My tone must have hit something in him because after a moment, he obeyed. Alyssa stood to the side, arms crossed, eyes flicking between us. I walked behind Daniel, placing a hand on the back of the chair. "I brought you here because I'm done talking. I'm done crying. I'm done letting you control the story." Daniel shifted. "So what? You're gonna show these to people? Ruin us?" I leaned down so my lips were near his ear. "No. I'm going to let you ruin yourself." Alyssa frowned. "What does that mean?" I straightened up, my gaze locking on her. "You'll see soon enough." Part 14, the broadcast. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small black device. With one click, the red light on the front began to glow. Daniel noticed it first. "What the hell is that?" "Live stream," I said simply, placing it on the table so the camera faced us. "To a private group chat. A few dozen people right now, but give it a minute." Alyssa stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Turn it off." I ignored her, sliding my phone beside the camera. On the screen, the comments were already rolling in. "What's going on? Who are these people? Is this real?" I began laying out the photos one by one in front of the lens. No explanations. No context. Just the images, the timestamps, the receipts. Daniel's face went pale. "You can't." "I can," I said coldly. "And I will. Unless..." "Unless what?" Alyssa's voice was tight now, her confidence slipping. "Unless you tell them yourselves. Every detail. Every truth. Right here, right now." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. They both knew it wasn't just about shame anymore. This was the kind of truth that could burn their lives to the ground. Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but then I heard it. The sound of multiple engines outside. Doors slamming. Footsteps approaching. Alyssa's eyes widened. "Who did you invite?" I smiled, slow, deliberate. "Not who. What?" Part 15, the final move. The warehouse door slammed open. Four uniformed officers stepped inside, their flashlights cutting through the shadows. Behind them, a man in a dark suit, Detective Harris. I knew him from a case years ago, a debt he'd been eager to repay. Daniel shot to his feet. "What the hell is this?" Harris didn't look at him. He looked at me. "Is this them?" I nodded once. The detective turned to the officers. "Arrest them both." Alyssa's voice cracked. "On what charges?" Harris's tone was flat. "Incest, fraud, and possession of illicit material." Daniel froze. What material?" I reached into my bag one last time, pulling out a small flash drive and tossing it onto the table. "Yours. From your own devices. The stuff you thought you deleted." He didn't speak, just stared at it, the color draining from his face. Alyssa started to shake, whispering something under her breath. The officers cuffed them without another word. Daniel tried to look at me, but I didn't give him the satisfaction. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching as they were led out into the night. Harris paused at the door. "You want me to keep you updated?" I shook my head. "No. I'm done with them." When the warehouse was finally empty, I walked to the table, picked up the live stream camera, and ended the broadcast. The comment feed was exploding, but I didn't care. I'd gotten what I wanted, and as I stepped out into the cold air, the first snow of the season beginning to fall, I felt something I hadn't in months: peace.
Thank you for listening to my story. I'm truly glad you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one of them.